At this pivotal time in humanity's evolution, we are beginning to remember our organic technology. A technology, when used correctly, can create an experience that the majority of people the world over want to live. It is time to use this technology consciously for our own benefit and healing, and no longer unconsciously for our own demise. We are divine creatures, creating both our own personal and our collective experience, moment to moment. We invite you to join us in the reawakening of this technology through experiment and experience the power to create and manifest. Become part of the 3%. The collective imagination.
Welcome everyone to the Collective Imagination. My name is Bob Wright. I'm standing in for Lisa Harrison, who hopefully may be joining us later on tonight. She's in transit coming back from California. She's somewhere in between there and home right now, but I think she might be home shortly, so she may be calling in later. But we have our regular co-host, Barbara, over there in New York. How are you, Barbara?
I'm super good. How are you, Bob?
Doing quite well.
Good. Quite well. I think it's going to be a really great show. I'm excited.
Yes. Got some really good talking points we want to talk about tonight in regards to transcending fear and how we can get by in this shift, in this time of change. We also have Chris Hale somewhere back there. Chris?
I'm down here, speaking to you from down under.
Yes, and how is life down under?
Down under at the moment has shifted, very cold. We've gone from late spring, early summer, straight back to winter, over most of the country actually, particularly the southern bit. So it's kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back from a temperature point of view, but everything else is steaming full speed ahead, as far as I can tell from my little cell down here in the Matrix.
Well, speaking of which, we were talking a little bit earlier, and I was talking about how everything seemed to have changed since Hurricane Sandy. And perhaps that hurricane, that huge storm, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, that was the largest recorded hurricane or tropical storm ever.
Yeah, in terms of its physical size, yes, and in terms of its in terms of its absolute intensity, pumping my memory here, I think it was either close or equal to anything that's been around. But the physical size of the storm was, really a superstorm. There's another very large storm in the it's just crossed over the Philippines and sort of heading northwest towards the Chinese coast at the moment, but I still don't think that's as big as Hurricane Sandy was physically.
Right.
So it was a massive storm, a massive energy dump.
And I think it had something to do with us, with our own consciousness. All of these things are related. All of these things are connected together. And I think it really marked a turning point in this whole paradigm. I think it marked the point of critical mass where things really are starting to shift. And I'm really seeing things move so fast and so quickly in my own life and in the world at large. But we're going to get into that a little bit later. For all of you who are tuning in, somebody mentioned in the chat room that they're having problems hearing us. Can everyone hear us okay? If you can, just type in the chat room. Somebody said that the volume may be too low. We'll work with that if we can. And for anyone who are tuning in, please call in. We welcome anyone who wants to join in on our conversation. The phone number to call in is 646-716-8255. 845-4598. Or if you have Skype, you can click the Skype button right at the top of the screen there, next to the phone number, and you can join us into the call. Or if you just want to listen in, that's fine too. But we really like for people to participate and join in our conversation. Now, we were talking about earlier today, guys. We were talking about this whole what we're moving into. Here it is. It's December 2012. You know, there's so much expectation, you know, but one of the things that seems to be, you know, very, along with this expectation, there's this great sense of hope. And Chris, you did mention that the audience that we're speaking to right now, those who are tuning in, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that you're right when you said that this audience is not an audience that is, you know, has fallen subject to what you call this fear porn that's going on. But we all experience it from time to time, and we like to talk about that a little bit, what has helped us in order to transcend fear, because there's going to be a lot of people around us, a lot of people in our daily lives, a lot of people, you know, that we care about that may or are caught up in that fear porn, that are, you know, caught up in worry and in the wringing of the hands and this whole, you know, people become panic-stricken. And how can we help them? You know, we need to look at some of the things that helped us to transform, and how can we help, you know, those who are around us do the same thing?
Yeah, well, to me, the audience listening to this show will probably have gone through similar things to you and I and Barbara, and that, you know, we became aware at a certain point in our lives that things weren't as they seemed, so we looked into it. And in the process of looking into it, we'll have an emotional reaction to the information that we're finding, and a lot of it, because there's such a heavy level of disinformation, is deliberately constructed to put us in a state of fear. Now, virtually everyone listening to this will know exactly what we're talking about. And everyone will have had, if you've reached this point where you're listening to this show now, you've probably gotten past that yourselves. But, you know, the people around you will be in very widely varying levels of the same process, and quite a lot of them will be right back at square one. So they'll have a fairly extreme reaction. Now, the sort of reaction I'm talking about is a classic fight or flight syndrome. You're presented with something, and you respond to it. Now, what we need to do in order to move past it, and I'll just describe the process that happened to me, was I more or less, and I hope I'm not talking to dead air at the moment. Are you guys still there?
No, yep, I'm still here.
Yep, still there. No, it went very quiet. I was just a bit concerned that I was off the air.
No, I'm here.
Okay. And we're talking about this for just to kick this discussion off, because fear is a problem that we have to be very, very cognizant of in the whole process that we're going through in the coming months. Now, the fight or flight syndrome is a really, really fundamental human response to danger. And the problem that we have is that we translate that response into things that are presented to us non-physically. The original response was because I'm going to get eaten by a dinosaur, or I'm going to get ripped apart by a tiger, or I'm going to fall off a cliff. So, you know, we physically withdraw from that situation. That's the flight. Or we physically combat the predator. That's the fight. We're not doing that. We're sitting in front of a computer looking at pixels on a screen or getting sound pressure waves out of a speaker. You know, we don't need to be in that state at all. We've got an opportunity to choose, to intellectualize, to actually not allow the process to take place. And for me, it was kind of, I learned after a while to sort of have a little, if you like, a little separate bit in my mind sitting off to one side, observing me and saying, hang on, fear, what's going on here? You don't need to be in that state. And to allow that to take place, we literally have to lift out of that lower state of, you know, let's call it vibration, that lower state of consciousness, into a higher mind where we can intellectualize the process and make sure that it doesn't overtake us. And because the biggest problem I see that we've got with fear is it's being deliberately amplified, manipulated, and thrown back to us. And fear porn is a great phrase to use to act as a barrier to be able to make rational choices as we go through this process that's inevitably seems that it's going to happen to us over the next months and years. That is my greatest concern, is that fear itself, as one of the American presidents says, is the greatest thing to fear, because it is such a barrier. And really, if you like, this is almost like a review of things not to do, not to let any of this material tip you into a state of fear. And the people running around you with their hair on fire, if the financial system collapses, can quickly doused if you can drag them out of that state up to where you are. So, Barbara, what are your thoughts on managing this kind of emotional response? This is your experience we're talking about here. How do you manage that kind of response yourself?
I have to tell you that I'm quite delinquent here. I'm actually looking at something completely different in order to manage the studio. So I'd like to teach the student caught by the teacher not paying attention.
Sorry.
That's okay. I totally apologize. You can either give me the crib note version so that I can reply, or you can move to somebody who's.
I tell you what, we'll let you off the hook. I'll throw it back and sort of ask him how he's managed to sideline the emotion through the process that he's gone through. It's been over a really long time.
It is a process, and that's exactly the way I have to describe it. It's a process because all of us, we've all been there. We've all suffered. Looking at our bills, wondering how is this going to be over, and just it's so very easy to become overwhelmed with all of the things that are bombarding you. You look at the television, and you're seeing all of these things. People are suggesting, you're talking all of that stuff, and you're going to get yourself into trouble, and at some point, and you made a very key element. At some point, you have to choose. The thing that helped me the most is recalling who I am, remembering that I am the creator of my own reality. Remember that I get a chance to choose what happens to me, and that everything that's coming to me are just options, that I get to say either yes or no, and that those choices will be respected when they're made in that space of power. And that space of power is where you know who you are, where you are consciously creating, which is what this show is all about. The collective imagination is all about, moving into that space of power where you are consciously creating your experience. And it's just a matter of catching yourself. Just like breaking any sort of habit, any sort of habit, you've got to catch yourself while you're doing it. And it's quite easy because you feel your energy drop. You just, what am I going to do? And you start to worry, and it can literally lead into panic. It gets away from you. So at some point you catch it, and you're like, wait a minute. No, that's not going to happen. I get to choose, and that's not something I choose to experience. And I am a powerful creator. And Chris, you had mentioned something earlier in the conversation, and I'd like for you to bring it up because I think it's quite relevant right now about how powerful human beings really are and what it is that we're actually capable of. And this is I believe where we focus, on this whole shift, because it is probably the most important thing all of us can do. is to step into our power. Do you want to speak on that, Chris?
Yeah, this is actually one of my favourite topics, if you like. I won't wax too long on it, but it's simply this, that the power that we have when we stand as one people is phenomenal. And the amount of time and effort that the powers that be put into actually dividing us so that we don't stand as one against them is probably their greatest area of where they expend their energy, because they know it's something that they can't resist. That's the power of the entire human race acting as one. If we ever get around to actually standing and acting as one, wow. And I'll give you two really simple examples here. One is, okay, we want to make, say, a geopolitical change. Now, think about this seriously. If everybody stopped shopping at Walmart tomorrow, how long would it survive as a company? A week? A month? It would be probably dead in a month. And if we act as one, we can do that. And another example is a bit of information that came out in a presentation from a very interesting guy called Stephen Kelly. He's just in the last month kind of popped out of the ether and started talking on radio shows and did a presentation at the Alchemy event in Los Angeles about a week and a half ago about his experiences with the elites and with underground bases and some really interesting stuff that he did. And the interesting part of his journey was that he ultimately realized that the real power that we have is in psyche. And this is a scientist who's very successful as an engineer and a producer of things. Sorry, did I cut you off, Bob?
I was just going to add to the story. You had mentioned, now this Kelly guy, he was commissioned by the government to find a way of a weapon, of developing a weapon to fight aliens. Yeah,
they literally said to him, he's a laser specialist. Developed a lot of the stuff that's ended up being used in police and military, and little gun-mounted lasers as his technology. So they came to him. They said, build us a big laser gun to fight aliens. And he looked into it for a long time in a fairly intense way, because he's a pretty intense man. Decided in the end that technology was not the answer. That the answer lay in the power of the human psyche. And the example he gave was this: the measurement of electromagnetic field density is a unit called Teslas, and the biggest concentration of Tesla that he was aware of that had ever been produced on the planet was from a hydrogen explosion that the Russians set off quite a long time ago. But they measured the flux density and came up with the unit 40,000 Teslas. Then he said that as far as he'd been able to work out, a human mind is capable of producing 400 Tesla. Now that would mean that only 100 humans equals a hydrogen bomb in terms of electromagnetic field density. We've got 7 billion humans on the planet. We all stand up and we operate together. What do you think we could do? That is the human race coming into its power. That is if you like, a scientific verification of the potential that we have to really, really decide our own reality, our own fate. And again, Bob, gets back to choice.
And I'm convinced that it's when we process that fear that you talked about, that we get rid of that fear, that power is actually activated. And it is our greatest power, it's our greatest protection. It is where we make a difference in our experience. We get to choose, just like you said. We get to choose what reality plays out. And that is the ultimate, well, I don't want to use the word weapon, but I would say that is the ultimate in protection. We have everything that we need in order to transform everything that we see that we don't like, that we don't wish to experience anymore. We simply have to choose.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to be able to roam the streets of the world and put a microphone in front of people and just say, if you could choose between a world where there was between two worlds, between a world where there was war and oppression and stress and tension and division, and a world where there was abundance and happiness and people following their passion, what would you choose? Choose now. There's no question what the choice would be, none at all. And the only thing that keeps them from even being aware that they've got a choice are all the manipulations of the media and of society, and the fact that we're kept in ignorance and in fear. And we've got to get to the point where we step beyond that, and then that's when we really get to earn our birthright. Because we're and this will relate, but we'll talk a little bit more about choices and why we're here and why all this is happening and why we're being brought to the point of choice now at this particular point in time, and awareness of the fact that there's a choice in play is as much a part of the whole situation as actually making the choice. And fear gets in the way. And what we're hoping to come, one of the things that we're hoping to come out of this conversation is that people will inoculate themselves against fear and simply not let it come into the equation, so we can make this move forward collectively. That is the most important thing, and it's one of the reasons I'm really looking forward to the shows coming up that Lisa's got planned between the 12th and the 21st, where we're talking to a whole lot of people about what they think the transformation is going to be. And I can bet you that 100% of those speakers will be speaking about fear as being the obstacle that we have to surmount, that we have to overcome. And the only way we can do that is with the opposite of fear, and you all know what that is.
Well, Chris, since you're bringing that up, let me just chime in here really quickly. The name of the event that Lisa's holding for that week is called The Countdown, Time Portal Through the Transformational Paradigm. And it's a daily live online journal so that we can catalog what our experiences are each of those days for 1 hour. And the dates are, if you're looking at it from Australia, it would be 12/12 through 12/21. If you're in the States, those dates fall on 12/11 through 12/20. And the time for each of these hour daily shows is 5 p.m. in the United States Eastern Standard Time and 9 a.m. in Australia, Daylight Savings Time. And they will be right here on Blog Talk Radio. Some of the guests will be Chris Thomas Hughes, Al Mariah and the Simeon Collective, George Cavlasius, Daniel Brinkley, Tolik. I think you pronounce it Anelia Benz? Anelia Benz. I know she is. I just have challenges with some names. James Gillard and Al Farrar. Those are just some. We have a couple of more. And so each day for 1 hour, Lisa will be hosting this show where she's bringing on each guest, getting their points of view, and talking about what's going on that particular day with each one of us. So, please come and join us and look to the Facebook Collective Imagination page for the details, as well as Lisa's website.
It's going to be a great week. I'm really looking forward to that. I believe we have a caller on the line.
We do. I'm not sure if they're there just to listen, but let's check out and see. Just bringing them on now. Caller, are you there?
Are you referring to me? It's Scott here, Barbara. How are you going?
Yeah, I am referring to you. I'm sure you've got some, very invaluable things to share with us. So, please take the floor.
Thank you. I was just talking to Claire a few moments ago about this question of fear and fear porn, and we were just taking a bit of a personal check on where we're at right now as far as our responses to what is happening around us. I would say, generally speaking, we've disengaged more in recent weeks from what is occurring around us more than ever before. But as I made a note personally in the chat box a few moments ago, it's taken 30 years to get to this particular point where we bear self-witness to our thoughts and our feelings pretty well in every moment. There's a very powerful and positive check mechanism installed in our subroutines, which enable us to really respond to what is happening. We had a wee incident last night where something came up, and funnily enough, it was just an old meme associated with responses that we'd had to certain reactions which can occur when we were maybe children growing up, our parents not responding in that particular moment. But those are like, the last elements of granulation flicking off the cellular body. Just to give you an idea of what we've done today, funnily enough, it's very warm here. In fact, I think it was warmer yesterday. It might have got to about 32, 34 degrees C, so it's about 30. Just check my iPhone at the moment. It's about 30, 31 degrees now. It's about 80, 85 degrees Fahrenheit. It was so warm yesterday that the candles inside the house here have melted. The base of them have sort of collapsed completely. So today we've hunkered down, we've pulled down the curtains, closed everything up, and got the fans going. And I've been outside a couple of times, and it's very hot out there, but very cool in here, which is probably a grand metaphor for how we are facing our day-to-day lives at the moment. Sure enough, we have the pleasure and the ability not to have to be involved in third world density like going to an office job and things like that. So we're very, very fortunate. But we have chosen, as someone was saying earlier on, to be here now. We've made choices to be here. Claire made a choice to come from Scotland earlier this year. I made a choice to do what I'm doing from a work perspective, with my writing, my raw food and my books and things like that. So I guess we are in a really, really wonderful state for which we're incredibly grateful that we are relatively well prepared. I personally think that the crunch will occur when the shift really hits the fan. Now, who knows? We're all speculating. We continue to speculate. I don't think anyone has an accurate or truthful bead, a factual bead on what is going to occur. Personally, I think whatever's going to happen will happen over a longer period of time. And the adjustments to our DNA and to our thought patterns will continue to change. There was a lovely remark, and I don't know if you've seen it. Let me just scroll down here. At the bottom of the Blog Talk Radio chat boxes, there's a lovely comment from a Grant Horsfall, who's based in Adelaide, South Australia. And Grant, if you're listening, just a big hi from Noosa, friend. But I'm going to read what he said. He said a couple of nights ago he had a dream where himself and others present were aware that there was a change coming. We all knew that by agreeing in advance to send part of our light to each other, that after this change we'd all hold, carry or channel much more light than we would otherwise. So maybe this is a part of what we're all doing here, sharing each other's light, so that we may all shine more light, energy that is, into this reality and beyond. He went on to say that he couldn't stay for the whole call, so he'll catch up on the recording later. But it raised a very interesting point. Let's assume that we lose technology as we have known it, including the ability to actually participate in a Blog Talk Radio session. Will we, because we have been pre-connected, actually generate a level of telepathic connections when we lose technology? Can we visualize each other, maybe from our Skype photographs or from Facebook photographs or whatever? Can we visualize our clan group, if I can refer to them as that, so we can generate very, very strong outpouring of energetic love? And I know this is something that
Scott,
Michael would talk about, but that's just some thoughts. There you go.
I can tell you from personal, first-hand experience that there are people on this earth right now that are walking around that have this ability perfectly down. And someone was actually able to pull me into this whole session where we were speaking telepathically for hours. It was the most amazing experience. And I know that it's real and it's functioning right now. People are doing this right now. And but before we get into that, you had mentioned that there was a certain point in the last couple weeks where there was a turning point. Can you tell me what it was that was the turning point that you think that made everything kind of fit together? Because that's what I'm experiencing myself, and Chris and Barbara also, we talked earlier that within the last few weeks, a lot of things, all the pieces just kind of fitting together. What was the turning point for you?
We had the eclipse, the solar eclipse, and I recall very clearly during that time that I was in a very, very, how do I describe it, a state of emotional flux. I was feeling feelings in my body physiologically. I was feeling drawn, and in my head it was mild anxiety, levels of anxiety, depression, suicidal feelings, a whole range of things. And I want you to be totally aware that I was aware of what was going on, and I'm very, very aware of what's happening now when things occur in my body. But, look, even in the last 12 hours, there's been a sense of internal reconciliation around a myriad of things that no longer really have any consequence or relevance to our day-to-day thinking processes. And I was referring to those memes of the past. We're here now. There's a sense of newness I have. I can't speak for Claire entirely, but I'll look over my shoulder. There is a sense of newness that I have, and I know that Claire is experiencing probably the similar sorts of volatility, but it's exciting. There's nothing, we're not into the fear thing. We know it exists. We can see, the duality or the dichotomy, the them and us type scenario. We can see that very clearly. We can feel that very clearly now. And it's becoming more and more pronounced. We live in the countryside, and we do have people who are relatively close to us. We feel a difference between our energy and their energy very, very clearly. So, look, what happened in the last couple of weeks? We rode it out. We're here, so I guess we should all congratulate ourselves that we've actually survived this particular point without jumping off a cliff. Because deep down, we know something. Deep down, we know what's going on. Is it a memory? How many of you have an idea that we've actually sort of done this, or the plans have been opened up and we've actually now know what's going on?
I think everybody does that's moved through the sorts of processes that this audience has moved through. I think we're all feeling that. I remember as a child actually thinking, knowing, it was just a knowing that sometime later in life that there was something coming. And it's become absolutely clear to me over the last few years that this is it. So where did that feeling come from? That was a long time ago. I'm talking about as maybe a 10-year-old. That was 40 years ago.
It was exactly at the same age, Chris. And it may not seem relevant, but I remember this story very well because I remember having this feeling very clearly at the time. And I was in 5th grade at the time, and we used to have this at the end of the year, right before school let out for summer, we had this big kickball game, and it was the 5th graders versus the 6th graders, because the 5th graders were about to become, the big boys in elementary school. And there was this big, huge tournament, that we had. And during the time, I remember this feeling that came over me, because we actually won the game. We beat the 6th graders. And I remember that there was this feeling coming over me, and I have had conversations with my teacher and said the same thing. There's something very different about your class. There's something very different about this generation that's coming up. And I felt that I belonged to something very special, that there was something about my generation that was playing a very pivotal role, and that there was something, I couldn't put my finger on it, but it was definitely that sense that was there at a very early age. And like you said, Scott, here we are.
I actually wanted to jump in, too, for just a moment and go back to what Scott was talking about relative to both fear and the feeling that things are just changing and evolving in the last few weeks. I went for a walk tonight before the show a little while, and it was just, we're having unbelievably warm weather here on Long Island for December, and I wanted to take advantage of that and look at some of the Christmas lights that people have up. And I was just in a state of, bliss and joy and calm, and, I wasn't really thinking. And then all of a sudden I was washed over with this extremely heavy feeling that just made me, I could feel that it was almost like when tears start to well up in your eyes, it was like that, but through my whole body, and I felt like I was going to cry. And I thought, God, that's weird. Where the heck did that come from? And I looked around and saw this house that was really dark and not kept up. And I'm not going to attribute it to the house, but I thought, wow, I wonder, because I knew it wasn't me. It was not anything coming from me. And it just came out of nowhere. And I looked at the house and I thought, I wonder if something happened in this house, in this yard, in this street, or something along those lines. But I feel like I'm picking up something that's not me. And I don't have those kinds of experiences. So I walked past the house and knowing that it was not of me, just shook it off and I was back to exactly where I was. So I was very curious and walked around that block again. And, tried not, I actually, about 3 houses away, I actually closed my eyes and just tried to listen to the sound so I wouldn't really know when I was getting close to that house. And all of a sudden I felt it again. So when he's talking about that, he was feeling, a sense of depression and some negative feelings like that, I'm of the mind that these are not of us, that we're experiencing them because they are around us, maybe in some areas or some circumstances more so than just passing somebody's house or passing an area. But I also have noticed that in the last few weeks, for me, I feel a lot different, and it's since the hurricane. And at first I attributed it to the electricity grid was down, so there was nothing, affecting the electromagnetic field around me. And I felt everything from a long-lasting elevator feeling out of nowhere that, I knew I wasn't sick, but I felt that, to having an out-of-body experience, which I'd never had before, to just feeling really connected to everything. So I'm sure that many of us are going to go through the gamut of all kinds of experiences that may not always be of us, but are connecting us in a new way to everything. If I can express it that way, it's almost like being plugged in. And Bob, you were talking about before the show that you felt that there were some turning points that were catalysts for some of this, and I have to agree with you. And it really does parlay well into what Scott was just talking about.
Yes, exactly. That hurricane, that was definitely, because I remember after the hurricane had passed, and there's always that, after a storm, there's always that sense of newness in the air, that freshness after storm, where the air is somehow kind of just cleansed. It's probably one of the, I don't know, I'm sure you understand what I mean when I say that, if anyone's been in the storm like that. Afterwards, there's this sense of cleansing, like the air is cleaner, it's clearer than it ever was, and like something had been washed away, and it was a very one of those profound moments where you just feel it inside you. Something has shifted, something's changed. It's not one of those things that these experiences that you said that you don't have, which apparently you do now, Barbara.
Yeah, I do now.
These experiences that, they almost become ineffable because, there's something that we haven't been accustomed to. It's not something, but there's a familiarness about it. And you're right, Scott. There is this familiarness that, we've been through this before, and I'm sure you're absolutely right. And we are all making choices. And I do also feel that a lot of us are connecting, like you said, that Grant guy, in our dream time. That a lot of us are working and towards, a collective goal together in our dream time, because there in that realm, we're not encumbered by a lot of the things. We're operating in a much lighter density. And I see that, and I feel that we are already ascended there in that realm, and we're working on bringing that what we experience in our dream time, because everyone that I've spoke to that's aware has been experiencing extremely vivid dreams over the past couple years, and I believe that there's a purpose for that. That we're actually bringing that reality into the physical world. And this is one of the things that I've been coming much more clear on, how the physical world and the spiritual world, there's really no separation. We are reflecting, we are the essence of heaven. We are, and we get to manifest what heaven is to us. And so far we've been manifesting fearful things. That's not what we're here for. We're here to experience what our version of heaven is. And each of us have their own version of heaven, and we can create it. We are creating it. And I believe we're seeing it happen right now. Things are so much accelerating, like you said. In the last couple of weeks, I have absorbed so much information. And Chris, I know you have as well, because we're all sharing this journey together. We talk off air as much as we do, in our conversations that you're privy to on once a week. But there's so much happening, and it's fantastic. I'm glad to be here and alive at this period of time.
Can I give you another metaphor for something here? Can I just describe something which has just come to mind? For me, it's like I've just walked into a theater, and some months ago or some years ago, the stage was empty, but gradually it's been filling up with new scenery. So the stage was empty, and gradually it's been filling up with new bits and pieces of scenery and mountaintops and trees, just filling out the scene. And then gradually individuals have emerged onto that stage, which I have begun to have relationship with. And then gradually that reality, it's a bit like going to the theater and watching a play, and gradually that reality is actually transcending all other realities, because that's the new focus. And I guess you've gone to a theater, and by the way, there's no name to the play, and the scenery, the props, and the players are all people that I've seemed to have brought onto that stage myself, without any script. And I think that's probably the most exciting thing, is that there's no script here. You mentioned about being able to create our reality. I know that Claire and I are probably working overtime in the context of creating reality. This whole supernormal, supernatural, superconsciousness is forming, like those characters and those props and that scenery on that stage for me. Claire's right beside me. Would you like to say something?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Just thinking about what you were saying earlier about being the creators of our own reality. I see myself increasingly more like an observer. And so a situation evolves in front of me. I might be involved in it, I might not, I might just be. But whether I am involved in it, I still tend to see myself more and more as an observer in that particular situation. And I personally find that I'm getting much less concerned about what's going to happen or what's happening. because I'm seeing little evidences of it every single day in my life. And I'm also aware that what's happening in my life is really my creation and my wee world. It doesn't really, it's not important what other people, what's going on in other people's lives at that particular time. And an interesting example on Sunday morning, which I'll share with you, to me is a real evidence of how I've grown over the past 3 or 4 years, where I've come out of a very fearful situation where I lost everything. I lost all my future security. I was severely burned financially, and that experience led me to look very, very closely at what was going on and what we had created and the illusion that I had been living under for my 60 years on the planet. But what happened on Sunday morning was really interesting, because I was driving along the road to go to the market and help Scott out, and I was driving along not even aware of where I was. I was obviously on automatic pilot. I didn't have the radio on, and I was daydreaming, but I was very much in control of the car until I saw police, an Australian traffic police car coming towards me with the lights flashing. And I remember thinking, oh, somebody's in trouble. Then I looked in my rear mirror, and as the car turned around and started following me, I thought, it's me he's after. And immediately I felt totally calm, and I heard a voice, me, saying to me, you're not going to get a ticket. Don't worry about this. You haven't done anything wrong. But I pulled over, and the handsome young Australian police cop walked up to the car, and I smiled, said good morning, and I said, was I going too fast? He said, yeah, just a little bit. You were doing 92 in a 60 limit. Now, I said, really? Because it was like, I didn't feel as if I was going fast. I'm a careful driver. I've been driving for 40 odd years. So the roads were quiet. There was no danger. But I wasn't obviously aware that I was in a 60 zone. Now, what was he didn't give me a ticket. He said, look, you have to be aware, you go from 100 to 80 to 60, you have to stick within the limit. Otherwise, you're going to get lots of tickets. But as he was speaking, I could hear myself saying, you're not getting a ticket. You're not getting a ticket. He's not giving you a ticket. And I was really calm. Now, I'm driving in another country. I'm in a friend's car who's loaned it to me while she's travelling. I don't even know how the system works here, but I had this very strong sense of calm. As he drove off and I drove off, I thought that was an interesting situation, because at some point, whenever you see a blue light flashing, there's an anxiety. There's an anxiety comes up, whether it's you're involved in it or not. It creates an anxiety in us all. And as the day went on and I was reflecting back on that, and even today, 3 days later, I'm thinking, gosh, 32 over the limit. I should have been locked up for that. But I knew somehow my reaction and the energy that I gave out to that young officer was obviously part of my creation. That knowing, I can be calm, I have nothing to fear, it will all be okay. That was all I kept hearing, and I think that's the practice that I've been going through for the last 3 or 4 years. And actually welcoming now what's happening, because the system that we've been living in, it's just not working. It's broken down. So have I chosen to be here at a time when the change is happening? Possibly. And if I have, then what's my contribution? It cannot be one that comes from fear. It has to be one that is going to be reassuring and helping other people to see that everything's okay. There is nothing to fear. We are the creators of our own reality.
No.
If I can just, I just wanted to comment on. I've just had a brain seizure, and I've forgotten this one.
Claire.
Sorry, Claire. Lovely accent, Claire.
Thank you.
What Claire went through was exactly the process that we were talking about a bit earlier when it comes to processing fear. See, that fear is a mind virus, and the memes that we live in, the sort of themes that run through our thought and the way we respond to things around us are built up by our personal experiences over a lifetime. And what the controllers have spent a lot of money and time doing is instilling into us various fear memes with very strong themes, and one of them is fear of getting into trouble with authority. Now, what happened to her was as soon as she saw the red lights, that meme tried to kick in. But she overcame it. And there was a moment where the emotionality, instead of being focused into a negative side, oh my God, he's going to give me a ticket and getting into a big argument, the energy got launched into a positive side of, no, this isn't going to happen, it'll be fine. And it was. And that is absolutely perfect, Claire. Thank you for that.
What I also heard her say, though, was she said she heard me saying to me. And I'm just curious, Claire, do you feel like that was literally you talking to yourself, or something outside of yourself talking to you inside your head as you?
Great question, Barbara. I do feel it's me. I do feel it's me because the mind that's me is different from the physical me. You know, the flesh and blood me, that mind element of me. The emotional reactions come through my physical body. The reflection I see in the mirror is my physical body. But the person who's creating the thoughts and who's guiding me is me. Now, that's also you and, you know, and Scott and everyone else in this. It's all that energy. And I'm choosing to with practice. This is not something that's happened overnight. I've been reading personal self-development books since I was 18 years old, and ran away from home as a young girl in Scotland. Went to live in London at the age of 17. Terrifying. When I look back now, I think, geez, where did I get the courage? But I always felt protected, and at that time, I prayed to the God that I'd been brought up with in the Catholic Church. But now, over the years, through the numerous experiences that I've had, some fantastic, some horrendous, I've realised that it's me. We're all part of this is part of the oneness, and I'm very much a part of that. And I have to acknowledge myself for that. I think that we do ourselves a big disservice by not acknowledging ourselves. We were just discussing this morning Marianne Williamson's words about that fear of the fear of not being enough. It's the fear of how brilliant you are. Every single one of us, the fact that we're having this conversation over these thousands of kilometres at this time on a particular day is a testament to our acknowledgement of ourselves. We do have something to say, and we're entitled to say it. We have to let go of this tendency to keep our mouth shut or not express an opinion, because we've been conditioned not to do that by well-meaning parents, by teachers, by politicians, by the media. And now we're saying, no, that's not happening anymore. I'm here. I'm a valuable member of this society. I've got something to say. And as long as you look at people who are in crisis situations right now, who are in the middle of a fight. It may be a domestic argument, or they could be in a civil war zone. I'm not there. I choose not to be there. That doesn't mean to say I don't have empathy or sympathy for those people. But when I have a conversation with myself, which I think was what you were talking about, Barbara, I have to acknowledge, yes, it is me, it's part of me. It's not something outside of me, it's part of me. I came into this physical reality with the body that I've got, the reflection I see in the mirror, but I'm driving it. I'm driving this body.
Yeah, so the reason I asked is I talk to myself all the time, but usually in my head, and it's if it had a sound, it would be my voice talking to me. But yes. I have on two distinct occasions in my life had the same voice, that is my voice, in the same way that you talk to yourself inside your head, say something to me, but it did not feel like it was me. And I've come to believe that it's the oneness, the higher version of me, like whatever you want to call that. I mean, you can even call it, source, you can call it God, or you can literally call it your higher self. But I could tell that it wasn't the same conversational voice that I'm talking to, because it was talking to me in a way, as opposed to me talking to myself. I'll give you one quick example. We had a storm here a couple of years ago, and the winds were between 55 and 70 miles an hour. And I had a window blowout, and I had covered it with cardboard and nailed it in. and was really worried that it was going to blow out. And I heard something upstairs, and I went upstairs and fixed it again, because it did literally blow out. And here I am standing on a chair with 70-mile-an-hour winds blowing through that window and knocking me over. I'm trying to put that thing up and nail it in, and it was horrendous. And then when I came downstairs, I kept thinking, is it going to hold? Is it going to hold? Is it going to hold? And that's when I heard this voice that said, don't worry, it'll be fine, it'll hold. And it was like someone else was talking to me in that same me voice. And it was like, wow, that wasn't really this, that wasn't the conversational me. But it was really cool. But I do now believe that was literally me, just the me that is the true essence of who I am, that kernel of oneness.
Yeah, and I have had experiences where I've heard a voice and I've turned around and there's been no one there. But I have a brother who's extremely sensitive in that manner. And since he was a young kid, he was always having conversations. I remember as a little toddler, we often found Paul just chatting to himself. And he's a real nature boy. And as he was getting older, he had some major challenges because these voices were getting louder and louder. And he ended up, doing some silly things, and he was very fearful and didn't know where they were coming from. But I think he probably was channeling something, but nobody was listening to him. His brothers and sisters and his parents weren't listening to him, and he ended up spending some time in an institution for mentally disturbed. But that was a wake-up call for him, because when he realised during the 3 months that he was there, and he saw some severely mentally disturbed patients in that hospital, he realised that he was okay. He was okay, but he had to allow the voices to come through. And he actually started writing, and a lot of what he was writing wasn't making any sense to him. But I think he's left that part to one side in recent years. I don't know. I haven't had a conversation with him in that depth. But yeah, I do understand exactly what you're saying, Barbara, and I have had occasions where I think, oh, well, who was that talking to me? And then again, my own voice comes back in and says, well, it's okay. If what was said, if you're comfortable with that, it's all okay. But just on the point that you were making about talking to yourself, I do actually answer myself out loud now, and it's really, really good fun. It lightens up a heavy situation. So don't worry about talking to yourself too much.
This is, and I hate to break the conversation up. We're coming up to the top of the hour, but I love the fact that we're having this conversation, that we are able to communicate in such a way, because so many of us for so long have been on this journey and been the white black sheep of the family,
yeah,
and alone in this journey. And finally, we're all starting to come together to this realization. And one of the things that I want to pick up, because we're going to have a little music break in a few minutes, one of the things that I've been experiencing and enjoying so much is being authentic. Like, I remember the exhilaration of what it feels like to break the rules. Do you know that feeling when you break the rules? I mean, I'm not saying to harm anyone, but you doing something that authority told you that you're not supposed to do. And the liberating feeling that I got, that I had a choice. I was doing something deliberately. And so I think through this process and what I'm coming to understand about, myself and my own awakening or growing, I don't believe there's ever a destination to it, but what I've been experiencing is the joy of just being me and not pretending and not putting any pretenses around it, just doing what I want and forgetting what anyone else thinks about and forgetting what anyone else is saying to me, but truly just following my heart. And, it wasn't always fashionable to be that way. And it's becoming so, and I'm so amazed at that aspect that we get to share this together, even though it's once a week. It's such a really great feeling. So on that note, we're going to have a little music break.
Actually, if I may interrupt for just one moment, Bob. Claire, how do you spell your name?
Clare.
Oh, that's okay. I'm just looking at the show notes that Barbara typed up for our reference before the show, and whether it was intentional or not, she's misspelled clarity. She spelled it clarity. Not quite the same spelling, but it's close enough for me.
That's cool.
Isn't it?
That's what's happening already. So we're already talking to each other subconsciously, and I reckon the veil will be completely lifted, and we'll be able to sit here and have these conversations, switch them on, switch them off. Be fabulous.
Yeah.
Yes, and we won't have any technical problems like Skype gives us.
No.
Infinite bandwidth.
Yeah, lovely passive volume and very gentle, enunciation and articulation. Everything just perfectly balanced. No, seriously. If that's the thought that's entered our head, then so be it. Then.
Okay, guys, let's take a little music break. Everyone who wants to take a cigarette or do whatever it is that you need to do, run to the bathroom. We'll be back on the other side of the break. We'll continue the conversation, and we'll talk about our intention for this week. So we'll see you on the other side of the break. Welcome back, everybody. We found Lisa. Lisa's coming to us. Welcome back, Lisa.
Yeah, I'm not really here. I'm completely delirious, and I actually feel I'm sitting in my chair and I'm moving. You know, like I'm still on the plane. It's weird.
Is that the red wine or the plane?
Yeah, I could go either way there.
Well, glad you made it back safely.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was an extraordinary week. I really got a glimpse of 5D living, and it was a beautiful thing, is all I can say.
Well,
just being completely in the moment and being in a state of allowing, and the way everything flowed was just gorgeous. You know, when you're just exactly where you need to be when you need to be there, and, you know, trusting that if something looked like we were running late or it was being delayed, it actually turned out to be perfect. And for those of you who know Anelia Benz, we managed to catch up for coffee on Friday afternoon, and you know, I thought we were going to get an hour together, and that would be the end of that. But
well done for even getting a catch up to her.
Well, this is the extraordinary thing. We caught up for coffee, and you know, 1 hour turned into 2 hours, and then she asked what I was doing there, and I told her about the seminar that I was going over there for, and said, "Would you like to come?" She said, "Sure, but I've got, you know, I'm sort of fully booked for the next 3 days." And next thing, one thing after another freed up for her, and she ended up coming to the seminar for the full 2 days, except for one little meeting she had to pop out and do at 1 o'clock just on a computer in the foyer for a little bit. We went out for dinner on Sunday night. She met us for lunch on the Monday, and even drove us out to the airport. She just watched her, you know, the next 3 days in her life completely clear up to allow her to hang out with us for 3 days, and it was, you know, it was all perfect.
That's pretty amazing, actually. That really is.
Yeah, and she knew she was meant to be there as well. It was she got a lot out of it. So I'm still living in that little bubble at the moment, and I'm not fully trusting that my mouth is going to engage properly with my brain.
You're already sharing it with us, and it's amazing. I'm glad to have you back. I can feel it.
Thank you.
I actually wanted to go back to something Scott said. If you guys think we're ready.
Yes.
Scott had mentioned that he felt like he was inviting people into his experience, and they were like actors on a stage. And in the last couple of weeks, I too thought the same thing, just not as, you know, metaphorically eloquent. And what I realized was over the last, say, 3 years, people have come in and out of my life where I didn't seek them out. They just found their way in. But also, almost all of them have left again, too. And each time they left, it was as surprising as how they entered. And you know, just like you do when someone steps out of your life, you feel a moment of, oh, you know, that kind of thing. But what I realized was I believe that I got from them what they came into my world for, and it was time for them to move out so that, you know, the next bit of information I needed to absorb could make its way in. And so it's just as exciting when people, you know, leave, whether it's on positive or not so positive circumstances, because to me, they've fulfilled their goal for me. And I genuinely appreciate that these folks are coming in and out of my life like characters on a stage. And I thought that was interesting that he mentioned that, and I actually felt the same type of thing going on as well.
Well, kind of like characters on a stage. At the end of a play, and I've used this illustration before, at the end of a play, everybody bows on the stage together. The good guys, the heroes, and the villains, they all enjoy the after party together. You know, and this is what I believe, and this is, you know, I believe is a possible future for all of us.
Well, I was wondering what people who may not be awake yet, or who think this is, just hooey, if they're listening to this, they're probably saying something like, yeah, but I just lost my job, or my house is in foreclosure, or I have a major medical issue in my family, or I'm in the middle of a divorce, or my kids are climbing the walls, or I'm having this stress or that anxiety. And what are you talking about? How am I supposed to get past this? How am I supposed to deal with these stress points? You're talking about this inoculation crap, but I can't relate to it. What is it that somebody like me can do? Because I sure don't see how I'm supposed to just not have fear or anxiety about things like that. You're not talking to me. What do we say to folks like that? What are those inoculation points that we can suggest they syringe in?
Can I make a comment there just very quickly? I have people every weekend. I do farmers markets with my products, okay? I have access to just literally hundreds of people on a monthly basis, all MOP as I refer to, members of the public. I stand there, they come towards me, they talk about this, that, and the other. And Barbara, you are so right. You are so 100%. There are more people out there in shit street than there are people like us who have a degree of awareness and degree of consciousness. What can I do for them? Nothing, except share with them what I did for myself. And in my case, I just fixed the food up. That's what the book is. You see that the link's up there now, the Divine Gut. And Claire and I had a monumental day yesterday releasing it as an ebook and getting tremendously favorable responses. But I have to say, how Claire was talking about Marianne Williamson about, not hiding your light under a bushel. It's been really hard for me to stand up and find the courage to speak the truth about the fraud and the misaligned intentions of the corporations around commoditizing humanity. But it's in black and white. We've had in less than 12 hours, more than 200 downloads of the ebook in our own small way. That's quite significant. I'm sure for other people it's probably nothing, but there's 200 people who have now access to my thoughts around unbolting from the old paradigms. And that book will be ready in a hard copy shortly, and I'll take that to the market, and I'll say, you read this, and that'll help. I had a case in New Zealand where a lass came to me, actually a friend of my sister's with a young kid, 4 months old, and they had allowed the medical people to put this child on Losec to control reflux. I know that was my issue, reflux. 4 months old, so I just am now working with her quietly, helping her to release from this whole thing and get the child onto almond milk and provide her with options. And this is what our job is, because this is what these people want. What do we do, It's all very well saying, listen, don't freak out, don't fear. They actually want something practical. And I guess the only thing I can share with you guys is share something from yourself about how you made your life easier in order to cope with the changes that are taking place.
One of the things that I do when people confront me that way, I start asking them questions. How am I supposed to, and I was like, I will say something like, how is all of that worrying working out for you? Is it?
You're so right. Yeah. Do you feel really comfortable worrying? No. And you say, do you feel? Are you over having a gut full of life? The pain in your guts, your diverticulitis or your reflux. Are you actually over that now? And the intensity of the pain becomes so great that they're really willing to listen to any solution.
I have to say to guys, I've just spent two days in a room, which acted like the microcosm of what you're talking about. Somewhere between 80 and 100 people in this room, and for those who were focused on a spiritual solution and had an understanding of the paradigm that we're in and this changing world that we're in, and that we haven't done this before. We haven't made this transition before. There is no blueprint. There's no instructions, and we're making it up as we go along, and being completely kind of at peace with that and just trusting in that. the majority of people, 99.9% of the people were in that headspace, in that heart space. And there was somewhere between 4 and 6 people who were not. They wanted firstly practical, but secondly, they wanted answers and solutions from other people to fix their stuff. I've been saying this forever. This paradigm shift is about self-responsibility. Us taking that for ourselves in every aspect of our lives. And you've still got people who are looking outward for a solution, outward for, that magic bullet, that magic pill that's going to fix all their stuff. And those people did not get what they needed in those 2 days, and probably walked away quite angry. But for the overwhelming majority, it was a big love fest, and we actually could taste and touch and feel this new world building around us, and it was just beautiful. And I think Scott's right to, you can share what's working for you, and Bob's right, get them to question whether or not what they're doing is working for them. But it just feels like we've just got to all act as mirrors and just go, you know what? Here, look, hold the mirror up. The solution is within you. You know what to do. You know how to do it. And that's what we're stepping into, is that self-empowerment and self-responsibility. Sorry, I am really rich. So that may not have made any sense.
No, that was lovely. Absolutely lovely.
Nothing clearer than the only you can fix you. And I'd just like to throw a little side story in here. Scott's description of being on a stage is a really good one, and I feel that quite often. But I'm also feeling like I'm part of a really large, infinitely complex tapestry that's being woven, and in part the connections that people are making across the planet, such as this program and the conversations that we're having on this piece of technology called Skype, are leading us to a state of consciousness where we will be able to do the same thing without Skype at some point. That was little comment number 1. Little comment number 2 about only you fixing you. I was having a haircut the other day. Yes, I still have some left, sort of. And the barbers were talking about this amazing thing they'd seen on TV where doctors were giving placebos to people, and people were just fixing themselves because they believed they were going to be fixed. So I said, I don't know how that works. And so I tried to explain it to them. They sort of looked at me. And I said, well, I actually know a guy who was a paraplegic a couple of years ago, and through his own efforts and his own belief in himself is actually back on his feet. And, basically their jaws fell open. And I said, if you don't believe me, I can give you his Skype address. And one of the barbers said, well, I don't believe that. And I said, well, that's the trap. If you don't believe it, it will never happen. Mm-hmm. And you've sort of got to give yourself permission to believe. You've got to give yourself permission at so many levels. Permission to believe, permission to choose. We shouldn't have to do these things. We've been boxed in by you-know-who and polluted with mind viruses all our lives. But the moment of clarity is when we realize that, and we realize that we've got the choice, and that gets back to the personal responsibility. It's up to you to make that final choice and say, yes, I choose to do this. I choose to accept that I hear myself
Chris,
in my head.
Chris, you were visibly at that seminar because you have just quoted so many things out of it about choice.
Well, apparently I didn't need to be, because you were feeding it through to me.
You got it by osmosis.
Okay.
Extraordinary. That was great. Yeah. Choice. It was all about choice. And we are constantly at a choice point right now. Old paradigm, new paradigm.
Yeah, Bob and Chris and I were talking just before the show about how in all of these elemental areas that when they begin to jive, that synchronicities are kind of like a byproduct. So we've had a really synchronistic night tonight, I got to tell you.
And I got to tell you that, I wasn't even at last week's show, so I didn't even know what the intention you set for the week and until yesterday or the day before. Barbara told me what it was, and I just went, oh my God, I got it. I got it anyway. Thank you to everybody who participated, because I was never there. I'm clearly tuned into the collective, this little collective that we've got going here, to such a degree that I didn't even need to be on the show, and I was part of that intention, because so thank you to everyone. And I am going to have to love you and leave you, because I've got to go and lay down. But there was one thing I wanted to leave you with, though. There's a movie out with the most ridiculous title of Abraham Lincoln and the Vampire Killer, or something to that effect. And I remember reading the sort of synopsis of it and thought, that just is such a ridiculous synopsis of a movie. I'm not even going to watch it. And someone at the seminar said, no, it's great, you've got to watch it. And knowing this person, I thought, he's talking about production values, because he's been involved in Hollywood and probably recommends it for its special effects. Turns out it was on the plane on the way home, and I thought, okay, I'll give it a go.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, just one of the many. And I was 10 minutes into it when I went, oh my Lord, the vampires is an analogy for the corporations, the Illuminati, the bankers, whatever you want to call them. That's the analogy, is these vampires, because there's references throughout the whole film about only the living can kill the dead, and the soul of and it's all around Abraham Lincoln's battle with the bankers, essentially. So if you want a quick history lesson, it's actually not a bad film. When you know what you're looking for and you understand what they're really saying, it's pretty cool. It was just as clear as day. So
that's kind of cool that a vampire, or that a history lesson would be packaged in a vampire killer movie.
What I thought was just the most absurd premise, but it was good. And the way that they set it up, so that a vampire couldn't kill another vampire, but there was an insider, you could call him a whistleblower within the vampires, who was actually out to destroy them. So they needed men, they needed living beings to kill these vampires. So it was great. Anyway, I'm sorry I can't stay for the rest of the show, because there's so much. I'm still assimilating everything that's happened, and there is so much to tell you all and share with you all, which I will do next week. But please, have a great time. I know you will, and it's so nice to be back, and I'll be back on board next week.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Can I pick
everyone.
up on what? Yeah, can I pick up on what she was saying? Just wonderful words, and she's been indulged, which is fabulous. And I suggest that we've all picked up on something while she was there because of our connection. There's a saturation point beginning to emerge. You see these themes emerging in movies, in mainstream movies. You see the proliferation of YouTube stuff. You see the technology enabling us to have this conversation. Our parents would never have talked like this. Our parents would not even... They wouldn't have crossed their minds to even contemplate a discussion on the subject matter that we're currently traversing. The saturation is beginning to actually work beautifully, where I feel that there's an energetic turn. It's like a balance. That equilibrium is now going into the positive light favor. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a banking crash within days, and I mean that. We're going to see something before Christmas, I'm pretty sure. And there'll be an absolute outcry, but we're going to see the truth just percolate gently to the surface, just as it's doing right now, and just as we are helping it to do by talking the way we are. And even in my words, in my wee book, if you can get hold of it, have a read of it. It's totally free. It's all my own stuff. But I just let it out. I just blurt it out. It's like saying I can't be quiet anymore. And who's doing it? Lots of other people are doing it, and that's got to be impacting on the whole energetic harmonics of the planet. It has to be.
We are all so on the same page. Scott, it's crazy. What you just said is right in line with everything that what we've been talking about off air. And I know that you haven't been privy to all of those conversations, and it's just incredible that you're so right on the same page as everyone else. So let's talk about our intention for this week. What do we want to focus on? I believe we talked about clarity. Barbara?
Yeah, clarity and clarity.
Clarity, yes. On getting more clear as to who we are and standing in our power, and actually begin to live it. Because what Lisa just said and what I took about it, she said, I just finished a whole weekend of living in a real 5D life. And that is, I think, what we're all heading for. That's what we're all yearning for. That's what we're all feeling that anticipation of, and we're touching on it. We're hitting at it, at certain points. We get moments of clarity. We get moments of exhilaration. And it's happening more and more frequently. Let's intend on bringing that clarity, that focus, and that exhilarating essence of life that we experience sporadically now. Let's focus on bringing that into something, a way of being.
And Bob, in doing that, we actually kind of fall into what Chris was talking about before with Stephen Kelly, the scientist, and him talking about the magnetic field density, the Tesla. And if we all are able to become more and more clear with each day and collectively intend for each of us individually to gain continual levels of more and more clarity, we actually will be able to really pump up those numbers, and we will be the bomb, the energetic atom bomb of this millennium.
Yeah, the other aspect of clarity is that there's a quality of calmness that's required of you to reach that state, and it's one of those interesting human aspects, and there's a relationship to breathing in that, which is an interesting physical side effect. In the martial arts, they teach you to achieve a very, very, if you like, calm mental state, and to breathe in a certain way when you're in that state. And it's generally, long, very controlled breaths. This is sort of basic breathing training. And one of the interesting things that happen is over a period of time, it doesn't matter whether you start out breathing. If you start out breathing, you'll reach the mindset. And if you reach the mindset, the breathing will start. Now, in terms of clarity, there's a calmness that's required to reach a state of clarity. But if you actually reach for the state of clarity, it will make you calm once you're used to living in that particular state of mind. And I guess what I'm trying to get at is I'd like to throw that element of calmness in along with the clarity into our intention somehow. Not sure exactly how, but I'd certainly like it to be there because they really do need each other.
A calm bomb.
Calm bomb. In part, absolutely, yes.
I love that.
And it's part of the self-responsibility, because to get to that state, you've got to be self-aware. You've really got to know and accept who you are.
So what's the feeling? What's the feeling? What I do is I drop into the feeling of this calmness. What is the feeling? And as individuals, they're completely different for all of us. I know that. But what does the feeling of calmness represent? Does one need to visualize something to have calmness? In my own case, what I do is I take myself off this earth, off this planet, and I look back at earth, and my heart fills. And I often use that in meditation. When I don't need a mantra, I'll just actually get off and I'll look back. I've taken myself literally kilometers away, and I'm looking back at this beautiful blue globe, and that sense of calm just emerges instantly. So what is it for us as individuals that will activate that sense of calm so that that meditative connective state increases in an instant, or it becomes pervasive in an instant. That I reckon is what the long-term goal is that we're in that state of calm perpetually.
That's it. That's exactly what I was trying to get to, and thank you for that. So well, let's do a quick little survey. For me, calmness is still water. It always has been still water. Really simple. And what about you, Barbara and Bob? What do you visualize that brings you to that state?
Sometimes I use the idea of floating on water, or just kind of floating in empty space. You know, that weightlessness, that where you just relax and you're carried somehow. I don't know.
Well, when I do meditations, I don't always visualize, but to be calm, I literally just start at my head and go down to my feet, and within a millisecond, I scan my body downwards, and relax it. When you first start to meditate, they teach you to, okay, now relax your top of your head, now your forehead, your eyelids, your glove, and they move you down your body. Well, it's that process just expedited. So I don't really visualize to be calm, and then once I do that scan where I quickly just calm, I just have an empty mind, and I stay there, and then from there the visualizations come to me. But if I'm actually intending to do a visualization meditation, I have a couple of places. One is inside of a cave, and I am floating in this cave, kind of high. There's streaks of sun that come in through the cave, and I can hear water trickling somewhere. The other one that I use is I'm sitting under a tree, springtime, in a field of grass with flowers right next to a brook, and it's just me and nature and the flowers and the rabbits and yada yada. So those are intentional visualizations. But just to be calm, I just do a quick body scan and relax myself.
So Bob, should each of us be trying to find that calm place during this meditation, our individual calm place, or do you want to lead us to a place that we can all experience together?
Well, no, I believe everybody needs to find that own space, and I'll just kind of do a generic guidance. Each of you will direct your own selves. This is all about self-empowerment, and we want everyone to find their own that own resonance, that own note, that authentic note that's yours. Your way of doing things, your way of expressing yourself, your way of, because this is how we create this orchestral harmonic music. We all play our own tune. It's not about uniformity. That's the Illuminati way. That's the whole, old paradigm way. This is about a melding of various notes, various frequencies, various different perceptions and colors. We're making music here. So everybody, tune your instrument, get ready, prepare. We're about to play. I don't know what song it's going to be, but we'll find out.
I'm assuming you just
Well
want
said.
me to use the regular meditation music that Lisa uses.
Yes, that'll be fine.
Okay, it's Journey into Frequency.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Focus on your breathing. Breathe deeply into your nose, out of your mouth. Allow yourself to hear breathe. Allow the rising and falling of your chest to set a rhythm. And with each breath you are breathing in the calming energies of life, nature around you, permeating your skin, entering into the cells of your body with each breath, invigorating you, relaxing you. Each cell is relaxing, releasing all tension, all anxiety, frustration. It is invigorating, eliminating all tiredness. Nothing is left but the peace. And allow this peace, as it permeates into your being, to pulsate through your heart. Visualize yourself in this most peaceful state of mind. Wherever that takes you, wherever that be, you are in your perfect space. And this is where you will always dwell. This is the spot where you always find comfort, this place where you play. Find that space, and there we will begin. Breathe in. Understand that we, as one voice, are linking together. We are unified, and we are bringing our intention forward as it radiates out. That all of our desires will become clear. That we will find clarity in the expression of ourselves, in our relationships with each other. That we will find the authenticity of truly being ourselves. Understand this intention will be carried with you with each breath that you breathe consciously, with each time that you think and remember this wonderful space that you play in. Each time you return, it will be there to enrich you, to fill you with the clarity of who you are. Allow this intention to move out into the cosmos, pour back into the earth. Understand that it will follow you every step that you make across this planet. We bring it into the ground, into the heart, into the crystalline structure of the planet, so that it may resonate to all others who are not with us in presence, but are with us in essence. And as we go about our day, we will experience this at the perfect time, the perfect place. And so it is. Wow. Is everyone back to reality?
Do I have to be? It was so nice there.
Well, I didn't end up in the still water, Bob. But what I did was flick back to a summer a long time ago where I was floating in a wetsuit, body surfing, and I went to sleep in the surf, which kind of freaked me out, but I'm still here.
Me, I was lying in a hammock on the beach in Rincon, Puerto Rico, where I used to live quite a long time ago, where I used to stay. And it was one of those moments where where you recognize that you're having a perfect moment. You know, the sun was just setting. I could hear the waves crashing. It was a beautiful, warm summer night. And I had never been so relaxed my whole life. So that's where I was. And it was quite nice.
Lisa SF in chat will appreciate this. I actually was in a room that I posted on Facebook earlier today. If you go to an aquarium and they have a wall of, that makes you feel like you're under the water with tropical fish of all types and, everything as if you were way deep in the ocean. This was a bedroom that was built around that circular shape. And instead of a bed, though, it was just a nice warm chair with sand. But that's where I was, looking into this underwater scene that was enclosed in glass in front of me and all around me, actually. It was quite wonderful.
Scott, are you with us yet?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was lovely, thank you. I just towards the end, I experienced just a great surge of energy through my body. That lovely tingling feeling when you tighten up your bottom and just shoot straight up your spine. I just felt it go right throughout every part of my body. And I was just moving from a myriad of places, but I think the whole Earth, that off-Earth perspective was just beautiful. It just sent so much love back. It was just beautiful. So thank you for that. That was a very pleasurable experience.
Yeah. Can I just comment on one thing, Bob? You used the term perfect moment. And Lisa described to me a whole weekend which was nothing but one perfect moment after another for her. And is that if that's where we're going, I say yeah, that's fine.
It's
very fine.
Yeah, and I think I'm ready for it. I've tried the other thing.
Well, I had a kind of perfect moment last weekend, actually. And this will sound completely trivial, but I was teaching my grandson how to have a thong fight, and by that I mean flip-flops for you Americans. Okay. On an oval in beautiful sunshine, fresh air, the temperature was lovely, there was people around the place, and he was full of energy, and he threw his thong at me, and I said, that's pathetic, here's how you do it. So we had a thong fight. And it went for about half an hour, and it was just like one perfect moment. And boy, the next day I was having some imperfect moments because the old legs weren't really preconditioned for that particular level of activity, I must say, but it was still a perfect moment. And I actually remember at the time thinking, this is perfect.
Yeah. And that's, I think that's what we're moving into, experiencing these perfect moments, moment to moment. It's a good feeling. Well, everybody in the chat room? Let me see what's going on there. We didn't get to answer any questions from the chat. Has anyone else had any experiences that they'd like to share? We've got about 15 minutes more. We want to encourage all of our listeners to participate. Scott and Claire, you've been great this evening. I really appreciate your insights there.
Yeah, I've been watching the chat room, and there weren't any questions during the show per se, but they have been quite an active bunch, and it's like a sub-conversation going on simultaneous with the show. It's been a joy.
Yeah.
Actually, there's two things, Bob, we could bring up. That one was a movie that's just come out in the last few days, which is called 2012 Crossing Over, which I've seen a bit of, and Bob's seen all of it. And Bob, you described it as a chill pill.
Yeah, it's a 2012 chill pill. And it's basically talking about what we talked about tonight. You know, that a lot of people have, this is one of the most expectant dates of all time, you know, and so many people have so many expectations and so many different ideas about what's going to happen and what this event could be and blah, blah, blah. And basically what they say is, you know, just take a chill pill. Relax. You know, spend the day. It's going to be another day. The sun's still going to come up. It's still going to go down. But what the big change is something that's happening internally. It's something that we're celebrating. You know, we get to make a choice, and this is what they, you know, talk about. We get to make a choice as to how we want to live, as how we want to be. You know, and whatever that choice is for us, that's where we should move into that space, you know, and feel that and experience. You know, this is a really, really amazing time to be alive. And we should put that link, we'll put that link in the chat room for those of you who are interested in taking a look at that.
Yeah, I'll do that while you guys keep going.
Yeah, one of the things that Lisa's made me really conscious of in the way that she's talking about, you know, doing this show and what she's thinking about over the next couple of weeks, just to bring her back in as she's slumbering, was consciously making a choice of how you want to spend those days. Now, I've sort of decided two things initially myself, and I'd be really interested to hear what people in the chat room and the other hosts have chosen to do on the 12th, which is supposed to be an important day, and indeed on the 21st, which is another important day. I mean, I've chosen to have a barbecue, and I'm going to get all of my Matrix family around, and we're just going to have a good time. That's my choice.
I am going to surround myself with all of my friends. We're going to get a whole bunch of good wine, good weed, and good music, and good conversation, and we're just going to enjoy the evening. That's
it. Barbara? You're probably busy, but what plans have you got on the 21st?
I have none. I'll probably do what I do every day. Start off with a meditation, and if the weather's nice, go for a walk, and then just do something creative. Because as Diane said last week, folks like us just get lost in the creativity process, and we just feel at one with everything. So that's more than likely that's probably what I'll do. And I will be listening to Lisa on that day doing the 1 hour segment for that final closeout of the countdown.
And Scott and Claire, what about you guys tucked away up in Queensland? By the way, just to remind you guys in America, Australia's actually almost the size of America, very close to it. Scott's in the top right, and I'm in the bottom right. He's real hot at the moment, and we're real cold.
Well, I've just looked at the barometer. It's 31 degrees outside, so double that at 62 and add...
30, it's in the 90s.
In the 90s now, yeah. So it's pretty warm. But we're okay inside. As I said, we're battened down, which is nice. Just looking at the calendar. So the 22nd and 23rd of December, they're market days. So
there you go. You'll be working.
I'll be with my flock. I'll be with MOP, members of public. Yeah, those are Saturday at Kawana, 23rd is Sunday at Noosa. I'm fascinated. That link that came up a week or two ago about that Mayan guy talking about the 8 minutes. I'm fascinated to know where that 8 minutes might actually occur here in Australia in particular. I don't know if anybody's done any calculations, but I'd be really. I'm just going to carry on as normal. And if the lights go out, the lights go out. If there's a big flash, there's a big flash. You know.
I just put a question in the chat box because we've discussed this. Well, when will it actually take place? Because we are ahead of everyone else, so we're already in the future as far as most of them are.
Look, if there's a number of websites that are publishing timings, because there's a specific timing which those who claim they know have translated from the Greenwich Mean Time, and for Eastern Seaboard Australia, which is approximately where you guys will be, it's actually 11:11 p.m. That moment of alignment. Now, whether that means there's an energetic event at that point, I have no idea. And anyone who tells you, I think, if I may use an Australian term, is having a lend of themselves. It mightn't take place for a week. It might be a day, or it might be so subtle we don't even really feel it consciously. I can't tell you. But timing-wise, there are a number of websites that are kind of publishing lists based on our current, Greenwich Mean Time based system. So you can look it up.
Yeah, you can be sure I'm going to be carrying my handheld recorder that whole time.
Yeah, because that's what the main guy said. Hey, just write everything down. When you get any lucid thought, just write it down. But hey, look, we're already having lucid thought. We're already writing it down. We're already, articulating it by voice, by the written word or whatever. It's all good. I think everything's going according to plan. That's my feeling. It's all going according to plan, and it's all good. And let's just keep our lines of communication open and establish our energetic signatures more firmly with each other. Because, and that's one thing that came to me while we're talking this, what is it that's going to keep us connected? And that's our resonance. We resonate with each other. So if we can visualize, then we can resonate, then we'll just hook in without any effort telepathically when the time comes. If the time comes.
Yeah. One of the interesting things about that Stephen Kelly presentation, I do urge people to look at it, it's quite an important one, I think, is that in this underground base he described, there were various levels of defences, you might call it. On the top level it was kind of bulletproof and real solid and all that stuff, and underneath they had a massive blast door for those even bigger explosions. But do you know what the next floor was? It was a floor full of psychics that were protecting the place. Now, what does that tell you about the importance of the human psyche and the power of the human psyche? So think about that.
I think the Russians got a bit of a handle on this. I reckon the Russians, and they're very more in tune. They're much more in tune from a psychic perspective or telepathic level than the American government might be. Although we don't know. They just build their walls with hemp, and then nothing will get through, nothing will fall down.
Hey, Chris, that reminds me of the Montauk Project and Cameron Duncan being the psychic that had to sit in the chair in order to do his thing and open the portal for people to be able to move back and forth through dimensions and through time.
Yeah, exactly.
And Chris, Lisa SF in chat is wondering where in Australia you are, because I know she's there as well.
Melbourne.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
I'm in Melbourne. Yep.
Okay, and you know where Noosa is?
Melbourne's a big town. I'm east of Melbourne, about 30 kilometres.
And your exact address? Just kidding. Just joshing.
And we're about 150 k's, an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours at the most, north of Brisbane on the subtropical coast, although it's pretty tropical right now. A place called Noosa, which is God's own. It's a real spectacular place.
Wow, Chris, Lisa says she is there too. She said I don't know how, Denongs.
Pronounced Dandenong.
Dandenong. That's where she's from. Are you anywhere near there?
Very good. Not far.
You guys should hook up via Facebook or something and go have coffee. That would be so cool.
That is actually one of the things I'm intent to do in this period of time is actually pull some of my friends together, some of whom Bob knows, and we're going to do just that in this period. So you're on the chat. Are you, Lisa? Oh, actually, I don't know. I don't have the chat.
She said she was referencing that you're in that daggone place. And she's in Bayside. Is that anywhere near you?
Oh, in Bayside. No. Bayside or Bayswater?
Bayside, it says.
Bayside. Okay. No, I'm actually up near the freeway place called Blackburn.
So is coffee out of the question?
Oh no, it's all good.
Cool.
Pretty good freeways around here. So look, I think the best thing, Lisa, is just to drop your email to Barbara so she can pass it to me, and we'll definitely include you on the list when I. There's a friend of mine not far from here, has a really nice lounge room, and he's switched on, and we have little gatherings there from time to time, and it's all good.
That's cool. Yes, she can definitely reach me through Facebook, and I'll pass it on to you.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind passing it on. And there are plenty of others around, like myself, who are, down with the program and are in communication using Skype a lot. I mean, this particular piece of technology has done an incredible job of allowing the process that Scott's referring to really sink home. That is, to really know one another. And he's dead right. I think that's one of the reasons it's amplifying this connective process that's going on far more than I thought it would, because it's happening at an energetic level as the same time as it's happening at this technological level. Absolutely amazing to watch.
Well, our minds are trying to sort out the nature of the connection. I think just keep our minds out of it. Just know that it's going on.
Yes.
Well, I know we only have a couple minutes left, and I'm sure Bob's going to wrap it up here in a second. I just wanted to mention something, Chris, that you had referenced during our pre-call, and it was that quote by FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And,
absolutely.
And do you remember what it was?
Well, what he basically said was, we have nothing to fear but fear itself.
There you go.
Fear itself. Fear is an entity. It's an energy. It's a in this case, it's a negative energy, so I like to refer to it as a virus. And we've been seeded with it, and it gets twanged really by the stuff that's to us. So we just need to be aware of that, and to, as Claire did, and just process fear. And by the way, Anelia Benz has some really, really nice fear processing techniques on her website, not hard to find, and they're just little habits that you need to set up to make it all just something you can push to one side at will.
Well, guys, we've got 60 seconds left. We want to make sure that everyone tunes in next week, where we're going to, that's going to be, I can't do the conversion between Australia, but in America, it's going to be Tuesday night, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
That's noon, 12 noon Australian time. And
we'll be joining with our first guest, I believe, for the 2012 shortly thereafter. So everybody tune in for that next week. And we appreciate Scott, Claire, Chris, Barbara, always, everyone in the chat room. Thank you for all of your participation. Thank you for tuning in. And we will see you next week.
Okay, and it's bye from Melbourne, Australia.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Yep, goodbye, everybody. See you later.
Cheers.
Everything seemed to have changed since Hurricane Sandy, and perhaps that hurricane, that huge storm, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, that was the largest recorded hurricane or tropical storm ever.
Yeah, in terms of its physical size, yes, and in terms of its in terms of its absolute intensity, pumping my memory here, I think it was either close or equal to anything that's been around, but the physical size of the storm was, really a superstorm. There's another very large storm in the it's just crossed over the Philippines and sort of heading northwest towards the Chinese coast at the moment, but I still don't think that's as big as Hurricane Sandy was physically.
Right.
So it was a massive storm, a massive energy dump.
And I think it had something to do with us, with our own consciousness. All of these things are related. All of these things are connected together. And I think it really marked a turning point in this whole paradigm. I think it marked the point of critical mass where things really are starting to shift. And I'm really seeing things move so fast and so quickly in my own life and in the world at large. But we're going to get into that a little bit later. For all of you who are tuning in, somebody mentioned in the chat room that they're having problem hearing us. Can everyone hear us okay? If you can, just type in the chat room. Somebody said that the volume may be too low. We'll work with that if we can. And for anyone who are tuning in, please call in. We welcome anyone who wants to join in on our conversation. The phone number to call in is 646-716-4598. Or if you have Skype, you can click the Skype button right at the top of the screen there, next to the phone number, and you can join us into the call. Or if you just want to listen in, that's fine too. But we really like for people to participate and join in our conversation. Now, we were talking about earlier today, guys. We were talking about this whole what we're moving into. Here it is. It's December 2012. There's so much expectation, but one of the things that seems to be, very, along with this expectation, there's this great sense of hope. And Chris, you did mention that the audience that we're speaking to right now, those who are tuning in, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that you're right when you said that this audience is not an audience that is, has fallen subject to what you call this fear porn that's going on. But we all experience it from time to time, and we like to talk about that a little bit, what has helped us in order to transcend fear, because there's going to be a lot of people around us, a lot of people in our daily lives, a lot of people, that we care about that may or are caught up in that fear porn, that are, caught up in worry and the wringing of the hands and this whole, people become panic-stricken. And how can we help them? We need to look at some of the things that helped us to transform, and how can we help, those who are around us do the same thing?
Yeah, well, the audience listening to this show will probably have gone through similar things to you and I and Barbara, and that we became aware at a certain point in our lives that things weren't as they seemed, so we looked into it. And in the process of looking into it, we'll have an emotional reaction to the information that we're finding, and a lot of it, because there's such a heavy level of disinformation, is deliberately constructed to put us in a state of fear. Now, virtually everyone listening to this will know exactly what we're talking about. And everyone will have had, if you've reached this point where you're listening to this show now, you've probably gotten past that yourselves. But, the people around you will be in very widely varying levels of the same process, and quite a lot of them will be right back at square one. So they'll have a fairly extreme reaction. Now, the sort of reaction I'm talking about is a classic fight or flight syndrome. You're presented with something, and you respond to it. Now, what we need to do in order to move past it, and I'll just describe the process that happened to me, was I more or less, and I hope I'm not talking to dead air at the moment. Are you guys still there?
No, yep, I'm still here.
Yep, you're still there. No, it went very quiet. I was just a bit concerned that I was off the air.
Nope, I'm here.
Okay. And we're talking about this for just to kick this discussion off, because fear is a problem that we have to be very, very cognizant of in the whole process that we're going through in the coming months. Now, the fight or flight syndrome is a really, really fundamental human response to danger. And the problem that we have is that we translate that response into things that are presented to us non-physically. The original response was because I'm going to get eaten by a dinosaur, or I'm going to get ripped apart by a tiger, or I'm going to fall off a cliff. So, we physically withdraw from that situation. That's the flight. Or we physically combat the predator. That's the fight.
At this pivotal time in humanity's evolution, we are beginning to remember our organic technology. A technology, when used correctly, can create an experience that the majority of people the world over want to live. It is time to use this technology consciously for our own benefit and healing, and no longer unconsciously for our own demise. We are divine creatures, creating both our own personal and our collective experience, moment to moment. We invite you to join us in the reawakening of this technology through experiment and experience the power to create and manifest. Become part of the 3%. The collective imagination.
Welcome, everyone, to the Collective Imagination. My name is Bob Wright. I'm standing in for Lisa Harrison, who hopefully may be joining us later on tonight. She's in transit, coming back from California. She's somewhere in between there and home right now, but I think she might be home shortly, so she may be calling in later. But we have our regular co-host, Barbara, over there in New York. How are you, Barbara?
I'm super good. How are you, Bob?
Doing quite well.
Good. I think it's going to be a really great show. I'm excited.
Yes. Got some really good talking points we want to talk about tonight in regards to transcending fear and how we can get by in this shift, in this time of change. We also have Chris Hale somewhere back there. Chris?
I'm down here, speaking to you from down under.
Yes, and how is life down under?
Down under at the moment has shifted, very cold. We've gone from late spring, early summer, straight back to winter, over most of the country actually, particularly the southern bit. So it's kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back from a temperature point of view, but everything else is steaming full speed ahead, as far as I can tell from my little cell down here in the Matrix.
Well, speaking of which, we were talking a little bit earlier, and I was talking about...
We're not doing that. We're sitting in front of a computer, looking at pixels on a screen or getting sound pressure waves out of a speaker. We don't need to be in that state at all. We've got an opportunity to choose, to intellectualize, to actually not allow the process to take place. And for me, it was kind of... I learned after a while to sort of have a little, if you like, a little separate bit in my mind sitting off to one side, observing me and saying, hang on, fear, what's going on here? You don't need to be in that state. And to allow that to take place, we literally have to lift out of that lower state of, let's call it vibration, that lower state of consciousness, into a higher mind where we can intellectualize the process and make sure that it doesn't overtake us. And because the biggest problem I see that we've got with fear is it's being deliberately amplified, manipulated, and thrown back to us. And fear porn is a great phrase to use to act as a barrier to be able to make rational choices as we go through this process that's inevitably seems that it's going to happen to us over the next months and years. That is my greatest concern, is that fear itself, as one of the American presidents actually says, is the greatest thing to fear, because it is such a barrier. And really, if you like, this is almost like a review of things not to do, not to let any of this material tip you into a state of fear. And the people running around you with their hair on fire, if the financial system collapses, can quickly doused if you can drag them out of that state up to where you are. So, Barbara, what are your thoughts on managing this kind of emotional response? This is your experience we're talking about here. How do you manage that kind of response yourself?
I have to tell you that I'm quite delinquent here. I'm actually looking at something completely different in order to manage the studio. So I'd like to teach the student caught by the teacher not paying attention.
Sorry.
That's okay. I totally apologize. You can either give me the crib note version so that I can reply, or you can move to somebody who's.
I tell you what, we'll let you off the hook. I'll throw it back and sort of ask him how he's managed to sideline the emotion through the process that he's gone through. It's been over a really long time.
It is a process, and that's exactly the way I have to describe it. It's a process because all of us, we've all been there. We've all suffered. Looking at our bills, wondering how is this going to be over, and it's so very easy to become overwhelmed with all of the things that are bombarding you. You look at the television, and you're seeing all of these things. People are suggesting, you're talking all of that stuff, and you're going to get yourself into trouble, and at some point, and you made a very key element. At some point, you have to choose. The thing that helped me the most is recalling who I am. Remembering that I am the creator of my own reality. Remember that I get a chance to choose what happens to me. And that everything that's coming to me are just options, that I get to say either yes or no. And that those choices will be respected when they're made in that space of power. And that space of power is where you know who you are, where you are consciously creating, which is what this show is all about. The collective imagination is all about, moving into that space of power where you are consciously creating your experience. And it's just a matter of catching yourself, just like breaking any sort of habit, any sort of habit, you've got to catch yourself while you're doing it. And it's quite easy because you feel your energy drop. You just, what am I going to do? And you start to worry, and it can literally lead into panic. It gets away from you. So at some point you catch it, and you're like, wait a minute. No, that's not going to happen. I get to choose, and that's not something I choose to experience. And I am a powerful creator. And Chris, you had mentioned something earlier in the conversation, and I'd like for you to bring it up because I think it's quite relevant right now about how powerful human beings really are and what it is that we're actually capable of. And this is I believe where we focus, on this whole shift, because it is probably the most important thing all of us can do is to step into our power. Do you want to speak on that, Chris?
Yeah, this is actually one of my favorite topics, if you like. I won't wax too long on it, but it's simply this, that the power that we have when we stand as one people is phenomenal. And the amount of time and effort that the powers that be put into actually dividing us so that we don't stand as one against them is probably their greatest area of where